Minister, my question centres around the thresholds in relation to the qualifying criteria of fuel allowance, and obviously this is a very, very important issue in relation to the next number of months. So I just want to get your opinion on the thresholds that people could qualify for.
Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you, Deputy, for the question. The fuel allowance is a payment of €33 per week for 28 weeks at an estimated cost of €366 million in 2022. It is a targeted payment to people dependent on specified long-term social welfare payments, and the purpose of this payment is to assist those households most in need with their energy costs. The criteria for fuel allowance are framed in order to direct limited resources available to my department in a targeted manner as possible. To qualify for the fuel allowance payment, a person must satisfy all the qualifying criteria, including a means test and a household composition test as well. This ensures that the fuel allowance payment is targeted at those who are more vulnerable to fuel poverty, including those reliant on social protection payments for longer periods and who are unlikely to have additional resources of their own. As part of Budget 2022, an increase in the weekly fuel payment of €5 and a number of expansions to the eligibility criteria for the fuel allowance payment were announced, including expanding the means threshold for the fuel allowance by €20 to €120 above the appropriate rate of state pension contributory, which enables more people to qualify for this support. With effect from September this year, the qualifying period for job seekers and supplementary welfare allowance recipients to be in a position to access the fuel allowance payment will be reduced from 15 to 12 months. The Government has therefore implemented significant expansions in relation to the fuel allowance through Budget 2022. Saying that, we are acutely aware of recent price increases and their impact on households who are dependent on social welfare. All options will be kept under review, together with trends in prices to inform preparations for the budget later this year. We will, however, have to take account, as always, of the overall budgetary context and the availability of financial resources. Finally, the Department of Social Protection provides additional needs payments as part of the Supplementary Welfare Allowance Scheme for people who have an urgent need which they cannot meet from their own resources. These payments are available through our community welfare offices.
Thanks, Minister. Minister, I think we'll all agree that the fuel allowance at the moment is targeted in a certain way to a certain amount of social welfare recipients, but I think that needs to broaden out much further than the cohort of people that are getting it at the moment. Obviously, if somebody's on illness benefit, you don't get it. Somebody on disability doesn't get fuel allowance. There's a whole cohort of people that just don't qualify. So somebody even, for example, that is on a small private pension and gets a state pension, if they're over the threshold by €5, literally €5, they don't get fuel allowance whatsoever. Now, you take into account kind of the spiralling cost of fuel. And obviously €33 is welcome, but it has to be relevant in relation to those that what income is somebody has to the payment itself. So there's a whole cohort of people that could benefit by a targeted measure, particularly, and they're not. So I just wonder, could you address that? And I want to allude to something which is really important on my response. Thanks.
I suppose in response, Deputy, to those people who are outside thresholds, be it by a small amount or in payments that don't qualify, the mantra that we'll keep pushing out there, and I don't think we can do it too often because a lot of people are not aware of it, is the additional needs payment and the community welfare officers. All those people who you talk about, they can go to a community welfare officer, explain their current situation, and there's an increasing amount of people in this situation as well. And Mr Humphreys outlined how the applications for additional needs payments have increased comparably to the 5-month period from last year as well. So that's the short-term answer, I suppose. In terms of the longer term and the budget, well, I suppose we'd have to take all the cases into account, and all the options will be assessed, I think, in terms of fuel allowance in relation to budget 2023. But in terms of those people who are in need right now and who are outside eligibility, the community welfare officer and the additional needs payment is the immediate answer there, I would say.
And I think what we'll see this winter, Minister, will be the kind of, I suppose, the apex of the cost of living crisis, particularly around energy prices. I mean, there's been 35 price hikes by energy companies in the last 12 months, and the cumulative effect is at least energy prices in relation to electricity and gas has gone up by 60 to 70%. That's fact. Now, another fact is, and I think the Minister will have to address this, is that 20,000 people since February this year were refused fuel allowance. That's an enormous amount of people, and there's a lot of confusion in relation to social welfare offices into those that are, say, on long-term unemployed beyond 12 months, because obviously they changed the criteria, which is welcome. But there's a huge amount of confusion even in the social welfare offices, but that has to be addressed, Minister, because I think that's just only the tip of the iceberg. That those that could benefit but are not benefiting because of the confusion in relation to the criteria. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you, Deputy. I think the Taoiseach has given a very strong signal, and all senior ministers, that this budget is going to be a cost of living budget. We're obviously part of that in the Department of Social Protection. Other departments are as well. We have the National Retrofitting Plan, and the one-stop shops are up and running now too. We have put 2.4 billion worth of measures into place as well. It's worth reiterating them: €200 energy credit and an extra 125 for fuel allowance recipients. Then the further 100 special payment for fuel allowance recipients. The cutting VAT on gas and electricity from May to October. Cutting the public transport fees as well, 20% from the end of April. Reducing the caps for multiple children on the school transport fees, and then the more recent announcement in relation to free school transport for the year ahead. And those really good measures in terms of anti-poverty as well is the back-to-school clothing and footwear allowance and the school meals. But I think you make an interesting point about the refusals for fuel allowance as well, and I think we would be wise to have a look at some of those reasons for refusal as well, to see if they can be part of consideration in terms of budget 2023.